Well, those protests in Iran clearly continuing unabated. In other news, US President Joe Biden and Israeli President Isaac Herzog held talks focused on Iran. The two leaders discussed Tehran's nuclear program and the accusations around its drone supply to Russia in the ongoing Ukraine war. The Israeli president said he would be attending the COP27 in Egypt next month, along with the US president. Biden is also expected to attend the G20 summit in November. Since taking office, the US president has sought to negotiate Tehran's return to the Iran nuclear deal. But reports of Iran supplying drones to Russia have angered Biden. He says he wants to keep diplomacy aside for now. His Israeli counterpart brought many issues pertaining to Iran to the meeting. The protests in Iran over Mahsa Amini's death were widely expected to come up. He also discussed the government's crackdown on the protesters. Biden also said Israel and Lebanon would sign a maritime deal to establish a permanent boundary. The U.S. had a key role in negotiating this deal. The Lebanese president, Michel Aoun, and Israel's cabinet have approved the deal. The formal signing will happen later today. The agreement between Israel and Lebanon is meant to resolve a territorial dispute in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. Lebanon aims to explore for natural gas in the area, while Israel is already producing natural gas in the fields nearby. The deal sets up a border between the Lebanese and the Israeli waters for the first time and establishes a mechanism for both countries to get royalties from the Total Energies exploration of an offshore gas field that straddles the boundary. The two leaders also discussed the importance of de-escalating tensions in the West Bank. The US president reaffirmed his commitment to Israel.
We're also going to discuss the ironclad commitment, and this is, I'll say this 5,000 times in my career, the ironclad commitment the United States has to Israel based on our principles, our ideas, our values. They're the same values. And I've often said, Mr. President, if there were not an Israel, we'd have to invent one.
For more on that story, I'm now joined by my colleagues Susan Tehrani and Jody Cohen. Susan joining us from New York at this point, and Jody Cohen is in Jerusalem. All right. Susan, if I could come to you first. When the US president met with his Israeli counterpart, many issues were discussed, but would it be correct to say that the primary focus was on Iran, the nuclear program, and the allegation that Iran has supplied drones to Russia to attack Ukraine? Now, President Biden seems to think that under the current circumstances, the nuclear deal would have to be put on the back burner.
That seems to be the U.S. policy right now at this point, and I think that that's what the U.S. president was alluding to, not only because of the situation that's going on with Russia, but because of what's happening inside Iran and the human rights violations against its own people on the part of the regime, with the killing of Mahsa Amini, the ongoing protests and demonstrations, the anti-regime protests there, and also the possibility that there will be more widespread cooperation between Russia and Iran. The United States recently announced that it has intelligence that Iran is now asking Russia for help in trying to quell those protests inside the country. So, you know, with the midterms coming up and also upcoming presidential elections in 2024, they do seem like they're far away, but they're not as far in terms of voters' mind. You know, putting the Iran nuclear deal in the back burner would be a safe bet, not only domestically for the Biden administration, but for its relationship with the international community, notably a country like Israel.
Interesting. In view of the upcoming midterm polls, it would be in the Biden administration's best interest, you're saying, to put that nuclear deal on the back burner. Jody Cohen joining us from Jerusalem now. Jody, let me come to you. As we know, the US has accused Iran of supplying drones to Moscow for carrying out attacks on Ukraine, and the Ukrainian president Zelensky has gone as far as to accuse Israel of being responsible for bringing Iran and Russia closer because Israel has chosen to take, according to him, a neutral position on the Ukraine war. Now, is that something that was discussed between the US and the Israeli presidents today, apart, of course, from the tensions in the West Bank?
So I'm sure that not only the war in Ukraine, but also Iran's involvement and also the extent to which Israel would be able to offer help to Ukraine would certainly have been discussed. In fact, in the latest, President Zelensky has hailed the positive trend in Israeli ties after the intelligence sharing that we've been hearing about on the Iranian drones that are being used in Ukraine. As you said, Zelensky had criticized Israel wanting the air defense systems. It's also important to note that there are other countries that also have these systems and are also having to juggle their own geopolitical interests and the interests of their country with wanting to help the Ukrainian people and very much sympathizing with the Ukrainian people. No doubt they will have discussed Israel's offer of building an alert, an early warning system to protect civilian lives as well, and the extent to which Israel feels that it can go in terms of providing support to civilians and saving lives in the Ukraine, while balancing the fact that Russia is in control of the Syrian airspace, and it needs to be mindful of that in order to stop Iran from its continuous efforts, they say, to get weapons across to proxies and to get closer to Israel's border.
All right. Clearly, this is a dispute in a sense that is going to continue. President Zelensky of Ukraine has, in fact, been very critical of Israel for its refusal to supply weapons to Kiev to fight the Russian forces. But on that note, Jody Cohen and Susan Tehrani, thanks so much for joining us with all those details.